You're killed by one of Capricorn's men while trying to save Gwyn. It's a very touching death scene. I cried when I wrote it.
Levi, you can just get out of here.
All right, books by the foot. Made some good progress this week, but if you want to call it a setback, it's a setback. I bought some new books, which kind of added to my total. But I'll just go through them in order as I read them. First up is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. It is 1 1/4 inches wide and it weighed 18 ounces. And it was pretty good. I was a bit hesitant going in because I generally don't read a lot of YA fiction. And I knew just based on the cover this is what this was going to be. But I ended up enjoying it more than I thought I would. It starts off as this 14-year-old girl, Olivia, who is in an orphanage. And she's a mute. And it's the general YA stuff of, an orphan, bullied all the time, doesn't fit in, that sort of thing. Until she gets a letter signed by her uncle saying, hey, we're your family, come here with us. And she goes off, and it's this manor house way out in the country that's secluded. It takes forever to drive out there, so it's hard to get away. And the place is near deserted. There's only 3 people in there. There's a housekeeper, a butler, and then her cousin, who does not want her there at all. He's adamantly against her staying there. But her uncle is dead. But if her uncle's dead, then who sent all these letters? And one of the things they get to early on in the book is that Olivia has an ability no one else has, is that she can see ghosts. In the book they're called ghouls, but she can see ghosts walking through the hallways, and they can't interact, like they're intangible, they can't be heard, but she can see them. And as long as she doesn't look too close, they'll stay there, but as soon as she focuses on them, they tend to disappear. It's sort of like gothic fiction for the teenage set. And I actually ended up enjoying it more than I thought I would. I don't want to get into any sort of deep spoilers because this book came out only a few years ago. It was published in 2022. And I actually did enjoy it. If you have a young person in your life that enjoys stuff like, say, Edgar Allan Poe, or maybe you want to get them into that sort of like Edgar Allan Poe, Dracula, gothic fiction, just kind of like ease them into that for whatever reason, you might start with this one.
You want to go home? I'm here to help.
And how do you intend that we...
Like and subscribe.
The Mighty Storm?
Next one is a graphic novel, Fantastic Four, Flesh and Stone. This is a trade paperback collecting issues 35 through 39 from Fantastic Four Volume 3. So that would have been the Fantastic Four run that started in the late 90s and went through the early 2000s. Now this one is a good time because Fantastic Four is always a good time. This is sort of a transitionary phase for the Fantastic Four because it was here that a new creative team was being put on. Carlos Pacheco writing and doing art, and the scripter, which generally just means dialogue and narration and things, is Jeph Loeb. And it was a new creative team being put on, so it puts the Fantastic Four into sort of this transitionary period. The first 2 issues are a 2-parter with the villain Diablo as the A plot, but in the B plot, Reed Richards and Sue Storm Richards are put in this spot where they might have to sell some of Reed's patents, some of his business acquisitions, and the then current headquarters of Fantastic Four. They were, instead of the Baxter Building, they were at Pier 4. But like I say, this is a transitionary part for the new creative team, so they're sort of getting back to the standard Fantastic Four status quo. Because in this, a new Baxter Building is built. The previous one had been destroyed. A new Baxter Building is built in outer space, and it ends, the very final page of this collection is the Baxter Building descending out of space and dropping into the footprint of the previous Baxter Building. They're not making any big swings here. They're just kind of like easing it back into the status quo of standard Fantastic Four. That said, it was a lot of fun, but Fantastic Four is always fun. It's a 1/4 inch, and it weighed 7.65 ounces. I wrote a book. Buy it. And then last up, I read Inkheart by Cornelia Funke. This is one I had read years and years ago. Now, This one's about 1.5 inches across, but it will not be counted on the Books by the Foot because I do not own this edition. This is a library copy I rented. It's not one I own. It's not one I included on the initial Books by the Foot total of 35 feet, 8 inches, 8 3/4 inches. So while I will measure it and it will go into a total width of books read for the year for the total of Books by the Foot, it will not be included to subtract from that 35-foot initial 35-foot total. But Inkheart, most people know this is a pretty old one. I think it was 2003 when this was first published in English, and it's pretty fun. They made a movie out of it starring Brendan Fraser, and in this one, it starts off, there's a bookbinder and his daughter, and they move around a lot. They're not often in one spot for very long. And for the girl, that's just life as normal. What you find out is that the father is running from a villain named Capricorn, because the father in the story, Mo, he has a magical ability that when he reads out loud, contrary to his will, it's not every time, and he can't control which elements it is, but when he reads aloud from a book, something from within that book pops into the real world. But the detriment of that is like something within our world pops into the world of the book. And so he's running around a lot because he read a villain and his henchman named Capricorn and Basta out of a book named Inkheart. And so they're traveling back and forth, trying to dodge Capricorn, following him, because Capricorn wants Mo's magical abilities in order to gain, one, riches, just read gold and riches and gems and stuff out of treasure books. But you learn later on that Capricorn wants Mo to read out what is essentially Capricorn's hitman. It's like a magical beast that Capricorn has control of that he uses to commit executions and assassinations and things. And there's a lot going on here. Books about books are really interesting, and I'll get into that in a minute because that's a similarity this has with Gallant. There's a book in the form of a journal within Gallant, and this is Inkheart is just a book essentially about books and stories and fairy tales and all that sort of thing. I didn't plan on reading this. I mostly just grabbed things at random or as they interested me from off my shelves or from the library. But there was a weird through line through these books, because in Inkheart and in Gallant, and maybe some possible light spoilers for Gallant if you don't want it, that I'll be getting into certain details in the later part of the book. Anyways, both in Inkheart and in Gallant, it deals with a missing mother. And like I say in Inkheart, the person who was read into the storybook Inkheart in order for Capricorn to get out was the protagonist's mother. And in Gallant, the orphan Olivia, she has a journal, which, like I said, deals with that a book about books, a journal written by her mother. And she doesn't even know her name. The journal's just initialed with the letter G. So it's a odd through line through both of these that there is this missing mother element, but also within Gallant, this is where I'm getting into spoilers, there is a secondary world, this shadow world, where it's not a world of the dead, but there are dead people in it. And it's also the through line of secondary worlds. There's a secondary world in this, and there's secondary worlds within this that are the creations of different books. They're not exactly the same, and that's not even unique to the genre. YA and fantasy just deals with that generally just totally on its own anyways. Okay, so where does that put us on Books by the Foot? Well, with those three things out of the way, reading Gallant and the Fantastic Four Flesh and Stone, but not including Inkheart, that adds 1.5 inches of read material off of the total for Books by the Foot. So I started at 35 feet, 8 inches, 8 3/4 inches of unread books on my shelves. I read 1.5 inches, and so now I have 35 feet, 7 1/4 inches of unread materials on my shelves. The total for things I've read, including Gallant, including Fantastic Four, including Inkheart, are 3 1/8 inches of read things total. The weight of those things I've read Gallant, Inkheart, Fantastic Four is 1.6 pounds. So we move on to how the shelf has expanded since I've read those things. So I picked up some things the other day that arrived in the mail. First off is this 5-book box set, the Necronomicon, published by Sirius. Now this is roughly 2.5 inches wide. Just a note on these books here. I only measured these 4 books because everything found in this green volume by H.P. Lovecraft, everything found in here is also found in this complete collection, which has already been measured and added to the list. So I've only measured 4 out of the 5 of these books because this is completely duplicated material from up here. A collection of weird fiction, mostly sort of like Cthulhu mythos stories. Call of Cthulhu and Other Stories by H.P. Lovecraft, The Haunter of the Ring and Other Stories by Robert E. Howard, The Yellow Sign and Other Stories by Robert W. Chambers, Yuki-onna and Others by Lafcadio Hearn, who I've never heard of before, and The Black Seal and Other Stories by Arthur Machen. And like I say, that adds roughly 2.5 inches to the shelf. Included with that, I also picked up some independent magazines and a short story collection. I have New Edge Sword and Sorcery magazine, issue 0. Looking forward to that. I saw Robert K. Vaughn talk about it in a video of his, and I thought, you know what, I'll get it and I'll check it out. I picked up Tales from the Magician's Skull, number 11, and that's a pretty sick cover right there. Same bit, Sword and Sorcery short fiction. That cover is absolutely wild. I love it, and I was excited to pick that up. I have here Old Moon Volume 3, a short story collection of Sword and Sorcery by multiple authors. It's it's a magazine roughly in the same format as those previous two. It's just in a smaller trim size. And I also picked up Sword and Steel by T.H. Brandt. 5 short stories in the Sword and Sorcery, and I think Sword and Sorcery pseudo-western, I'm led to believe. I haven't cracked into it yet to confirm that, but I'm excited to get into this. Just a quick note, the author of Sand and Steel, T.H. Brandt, has a YouTube channel that I think is worth checking out, so I'm going to put a link in the video description. And all together, those 4 add an inch. They're a 1/4 of an inch each, roughly, so they add an inch to the total shelf. So that means that I went from 35 feet 7 1/4 inches of unread books on my shelf to 35 feet 10 3/4 inches of unread books on my shelf because I went on a shopping spree and I can't help myself. All right, folks, so that will be it for today. I will come back here in a few days, maybe a week, and give you an update on the other things I'm reading. I've started into The Ice King by Michael Scott. Yes, Michael Scott from The Office. Next up on the list after that is going to be Sword and Sorcery from DC Comics. Those were published in the New 52 initiative. And after that, I think it's going to be House of Leaves, but that's subject to change. We'll see what happens. All right. Goodbye.
All right, Levi, you can stick around for that one.
Not one of those times!